So today we're talking about Daniel Boone, and I want to give you a little bit more information than what the video gave you. And you also have an article to read. When you get to the Daniel Boone page, just click on the title. And this is the History Channel article that you're using. It's called Wilderness Road. So you're going to want to read through that to find these 6 answers. There is no Googling of answers to this. So if you are giving answers that are not found in that article, I'm going to stop grading this entire assignment, not just the Daniel Boone page, but the whole thing. And I will send you a message saying you've got to remove everything that you Googled. And don't try it and hope that you don't get caught. It's really obvious that your answers didn't come from the article that I shared with you. And those are what your test questions are based on. So you definitely want to use those. When you get through the questions, it says click here for map directions. And I'm going to give you some hints on how to put these explorers routes on your map correctly so that you're not just sort of guessing about where they were. There are certain things that have to be on their route or you will not get points for mapping that explorer's route. So we need to take a look at that. So what you already know about Daniel Boone, he was an explorer and he blazed a trail through the Cumberland Gap. If you have not yet watched the story of us, you probably don't know what that is. So you need to go back and watch the video. But here's the Cumberland Gap right here. This road, the Great Valley Road, when you draw your map, you're going to combine Great Valley Road and Wilderness Road and call the whole thing Boone's Route. What he basically does here is blaze this trail, the red line, the Wilderness Road, into Kentucky, which allows people then to settle in all these western states along here. So he ends up here in Kentucky. Now, if I was mapping this route on my own map, there are landmarks that help you do this. First of all, Chesapeake Bay is right here. His route starts by going over the top of Chesapeake Bay. Then he almost starts to follow Virginia's border here. Here's West Virginia, here's Virginia, almost following it. It's really below it. He gets down to this border here of North Carolina and Tennessee, and that's where he starts to go kind of straight towards the Cumberland Gap. Now, you need to put the Cumberland Gap on your map before you map his route. Where you find it is where Kentucky meets here with the point of the state of Virginia and the border of Tennessee. So there's really 3 states right here where Cumberland Gap is. So on your map, what does that look like? Let's take a look. On your map, here's the top of Chesapeake Bay. This triangle right here is showing you that this is where Kentucky meets the tip of Virginia and the northern border of Tennessee. That is my Cumberland Gap. Now, if you don't draw Daniel Boone's route going through the Cumberland Gap, then you just changed history. And you took away from Daniel Boone the fact that he blazed a trail through the Cumberland Gap. So you have to draw his route, go above Chesapeake Bay, and then start to come down. You're going to be just below the border of Virginia, come through the Cumberland Gap, and then he hooks up just a little bit at the end. When he gets to Cumberland Gap, he starts to go really northwest, and he never gets back to the top border of Kentucky here. This is a river, and he doesn't cross that. He ends up right here where it says Lexington. So on your map, as you're mapping, you go from the top of Chesapeake Bay through Cumberland Gap and then a hook up to the northwest. But you can still see here the border of Kentucky is going to be right about there. He's not going to cross that into like Indiana. He never comes out of Kentucky. He stays inside it, which would be right about here. So that's how you're going to draw his route. If his route does not start over Chesapeake Bay and go through Cumberland Gap and stop before he leaves Kentucky, then your map is going to be incorrect. You'll lose points for Boone's route. Now, if you don't know how to draw the route, first of all, you're going to insert a line. And the one that lets you draw however you want is scribble right here. Now, if you first start drawing with it, it's going to probably be blue. You can't use blue because blue is the color of the rivers. So if I draw with that, the way to change my line color is this thing that looks like a pencil drawing a line. If you click that, you can pick whatever color you want. That might be a better choice. Then I need to draw that same thing in my key, but I don't want to make this messy. I'm going to insert a different kind of line this time. I just want it to be a straight line. And I'm going to draw a nice straight line in my key, and I'm going to make it the same color as what was on the map. Now I have Boone's route. Now clearly this is not Boone's route. His route is going to be here. Okay. Now, when you go to do Lewis and Clark, the core of Discovery route, which a lot of you are going to be tempted to want to do this now, Lewis and Clark follow rivers almost the entire way. So they're going to start in St. Louis and follow the Missouri River up, all the way up here. Now, notice the dotted lines are their return trip. We don't need that. We just need the solid red line. They follow the Missouri River as far as possible here. They end up right here, this thing that says Three Forks Camp, and then they have to cross the mountains like this. There's this little hook, and then all of a sudden, yay, they meet up with more rivers that they can follow to the Pacific. So when you're mapping their route, follow rivers. There's only a place here where they have to jump across. Mandan, you should already have the Mandan tribe on your map, and they should be in North Dakota, and that should be where the Fort Mandan is located, on the river in North Dakota. Okay, Fort Clatsop has to be on the Pacific Ocean, the coast right here, and on this river. Okay, so when you're mapping the routes, always, always, always look for landforms. If you get tempted to continue on, if you draw Pike's route and he never makes it to Pike's Peak, you've changed history because Pike has to discover Pike's Peak on his mission. If you draw his other route up the Mississippi, if he follows the wrong river, then his whole mission was a big problem because he was supposed to find the source of the Mississippi. He also follows rivers quite a bit. The Rio Grande here you can see, he dips below this part of his journey. He happened to have gotten arrested and brought somewhere. That'll be in the article that you read. So that will help you map his route. Look at rivers, look at landforms, and that's where you have to map them. Okay, so back to Daniel Boone really quick today. You already know that he's famous for that Cumberland Gap discovery. I'm showing you some pictures here. He happened to, Daniel Boone was made into a television show for a while. And so this is the actor that played him, Fess Parker. And so this is the image we've always had of Daniel Boone with a coonskin cap, which he actually never wore. But if you look at paintings of him, you can see they really try to make him look this way. So this is more what Daniel Boone would have looked like in his younger days and then as he got older. So these are actual portraits that were done. So they're a little more accurate about what he looked like. So with everything he did, he was extremely famous during his lifetime worldwide for being this great explorer and hunter and and a frontiersman. What a hero he was to everybody. He was from Pennsylvania and he was a Quaker. That's a religious group. His parents left Pennsylvania and left that particular church that they belonged to because their children wanted to marry people who were not Quakers. And so the church had said, unless you stop this from happening, we're going to kick you out of the church. And so they did. So that his parents moved and they moved further south. And of course, he ends up moving to Kentucky because that's where he blazes the trail. The thing the video never told you, they told you about his son being killed. The video says it was the Shawnee. The article says it was the Cherokee, unless I have those backwards. It actually was both. both tribes were working together to protect their land in that region. So it was actually both tribes that attacked them when his son was killed. What the article doesn't mention, and the video never mentions, is that Daniel Boone himself was captured by the Shawnee. For about 4 months, they kept him, and that was in 1778, and he was 44 years old at that time. But the chief of that Shawnee tribe sort of adopted him because he said he needed him because his own two sons had died. This was not an unusual thing for people to be kidnapped and then adopted into a tribe. That is a lot of what happened to Sacagawea. So, not an unusual thing. He says they treated him really well, but they watched him so that he wouldn't get away. But eventually he did. After 4 months, he managed to escape, and he went back to the people he had been with in Kentucky. Um, the other thing we don't talk about with Daniel Boone too much is that he never really made any money in his lifetime off of anything he did, even though he was so famous. And part of that is because he was cheated out of some of the land that he tried to claim. He didn't know how to file his paperwork correctly, so he was always making just bad business decisions. He just didn't understand how that worked. Um, and so people took advantage of him. And then he was sued by a lot of the settlers that were moving to Kentucky because he wasn't helping them with their land claims correctly, and they were losing money and losing land. So he ends up getting sued. And eventually he says, I've had enough of this. And he moved to the Louisiana Territory. And that was way before Lewis and Clark. It was even before Louisiana was sold to the United States. So he moved out there to kind of get away from things. But then he came back to Congress and he sent them letters and said, everything I did to help settle those Western states, he said, I really feel like I should have ended up with something. And so Congress, under James Madison, gave him a land grant. It was like 800 acres of land. And then as soon as those settlers that had lawsuits against him, as soon as they found out that he had land, they came after him with their lawsuits again and tried to get their money. And so he had to sell all that land to pay off the lawsuits. So he didn't make a lot of money. He wasn't considered a bad guy. He wasn't really the one who was dishonest. He just chose the wrong people to trust, and he wasn't very smart about business dealings. So that's how he ends up broke. But anyway, so that's Daniel Boone's story, and I just wanted to share a little bit of that with you as you're reading the article today. If you need reading help, in today's announcements at the top of Schoology, it says click here with help with reading and finding answers. So if you click that, I will help you read through, and I'll pause for you and let you figure out what your answers can be to write down to those questions. Hey, if you want to work ahead, tomorrow, Monday and Tuesday, we're looking at Lewis and Clark. There is a video attached to this one. And then there is an article attached to this one, Lewis and Clark, The Expedition of the Corps of Discovery. So you have a couple things to do between Friday and then Monday and Tuesday. So if you want to start those, go ahead. Again, just no Googling your answers. Use the actual video and the article to do those with. Okay, so good luck getting started. And if you have questions, you can come to the Google Meet if it is your hour. If it's not your hour, you can send me an email and I'll get back to you.